As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We have a first-time guest tonight, Ryan Cristian, founder and host of the Last American Vagabond, which is a YouTube channel and website, thelastAmericanVagabond.com, is here with us for the first time on Reluctant Preppers. Ryan, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You were recommended to us by our mutual friend Brad Harris of Full Spectrum Survival, and I was intrigued by the description on the About portion of your YouTube channel. I'm going to read it briefly here and then give you a chance to explain your mission. The Last American Vagabond was established to allow a free flow of information in regards to current issues that face the American people, the focus being on many such issues that are purposefully and discreetly culled by those who stand to lose either financially or professionally due to their relevance. It is this site's primary objective to bring these issues into an open forum and bring about awareness of these topics of paramount importance. So, like a lot of our other guests, we've had, for example, Mike Rivero from WhatReallyHappened.com. We've talked to Chris Duane from The Truth Never Told. And if you could let us know about what your core mission is, what you really see as your driving point that you're trying to bring into this world of information.
You know, it's such a heavy question, really, and anyone that's involved in this would agree. Because I think the most important thing for anyone involved in what we're trying to accomplish, whether that be, survivalist or prepping for, really just being aware of what's really going on, is being willing to adapt as things change and being open to allow things to kind of take you in a new direction. And that's, when this site really first started, it was predominantly about marijuana law reform. And because really that's where my journey started, is understanding how the government was manipulating that and how they were using that and how that was kind of a platform for a lot of civil rights issues. And once the Last American Vagabond was established, it was kind of created with that start, but then it really did kind of create, evolve into something of its own. And that was a lot of the citizen journalism aspect. And I was really inspired by what James Corbett was doing with his open source investigation, allowing the individual to get involved in that process. And, that's one thing that I've really battled with as we've grown is the naysayers coming out and saying, what right do you have to talk about this? Or why are you feeling like you should be informing other people about important subjects? And really that comes down to this need that those of us saw, which I'm sure you've seen as well, is that this lack of integrity in whether that be in the media or the government, and the void that they left, whether that be, in really just what we're all trying to accomplish, informing people. And those of us as citizens chose to rise up and fill that role because nobody else was choosing to do so, whether we have a background in this or not, and really just allow people to start getting the truth once again. And for me, I think that's what it really all comes back to.
That groundswell of ability of people to rise up and say, we are not going to tolerate this sanitized and, narrative-based corporate media as our only source of information has really been enabled by the internet. We have some questions, actually, for the first question from one of our viewers. The viewer by the name of Backcast asked this question related to that. Do you think there's an organized attempt to compromise internet discourse, as has been done with the mainstream news outlets? If so, how vigorous is the attempt, and what forms of compromise have you noticed?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would say that is a foregone conclusion. I mean, it's out in the open at this point, whether we're looking at Facebook or YouTube really, that's what I think is the primary measure in which they're taking against independent media is their revenue. Really hitting, like your Lou Kradowskis and, the bigger organizations out there with their YouTube revenue. And I'm seeing that too as well, which I'm sure you are as well.
Yep. I'm going to warn everybody in advance. There will not be full notes under this video. You will have to come to reluctantpreppers.com, sign up for our free email list. When you email out, we'll give the full notes in there because we can't put them under the description of our YouTube video or the monetization will be turned off. And there goes our margin and there goes our mission.
Exactly. And I mean, we're seeing that in every regard. I mean, Facebook just has the new fake news tab, and people are, and really one great point that I heard someone make today is that, I think it was Dabu7 from YouTube is saying that regardless of the bills they pump out and who fights them and who agrees with them, these will never be used to censor mainstream media. Ever. And that's what we have to understand, is that whether or not we're battling what's actually being sent, it's only being applied to alternative and independent media. And I think that's a very clear signal of what they're actually trying to stifle. And that's the truth, bottom line. And, I think that that's going to continue to grow. And we're going to see this happen in legislation. We're going to see it happen on social media. And it all really just comes back to trying to maintain that government narrative or the establishment narrative. Which, we all kind of know what that is today. I think that's one of the best things we've had come of the 2016 debacle election, is that people are at least starting to wake up to these things.
So we've mentioned the meddling with monetization and really messing with people's business models to be able to drive them out of business. Are there other forms of, whether it's trolls making comments constantly, or you mentioned the list of fake news sites that are being propagated? Other aspects that you see, other specific evidence that you see of compromising internet discourse?
Absolutely. I mean, this is where it tends to get into a little bit more of the, quote, conspiracy theory for some of the people that aren't familiar with this. But this is verifiable, where, people are being paid to go out and comment on different feeds and comment on different websites. And, like you said, they're basically trolling. These are shills. And for those that don't know what a shill is, it's somebody that is paid to go out and spread a certain narrative, whether that's true or not. And that's the agenda that we're seeing. And I mean, these are verifiable people. I mean, for instance, I'm in Sacramento. We were actually just filming a town hall meeting with Senator Pan that has there's a lot of vaccine bills going on right now in California that are very sensitive. And we have a verifiable proof of someone working in his office that was on the page on Facebook intentionally trying to manipulate what was going to happen, trying to send people away from it. And we have it all documented. It'll come out in a video on the Last American Vagabond probably within the next week. But, and this is something that's verifiable. And so people need to understand that that's going to happen, and at least just take that into account when they're trying to decide what to trust.
We have another discussion question submitted by our viewers. Is the congressionally mandated probe into Soros's activities using taxpayer funds a serious undertaking that will result in actionable findings?
That's a hard question. I think that comes down to whether or not we feel the government, or either one of the factions within this government, is actually has true intent to hold him accountable. That being said, I think that obviously what Soros is doing or has done in the past is true. I mean, we know he's paid people to protest. We know that he's funded these color revolutions all over the world. So really, it comes down to whether or not this congressional hearing is going to hold him accountable. And sadly, all we have to do is base that on our history and where we've been in the past. And I don't think it's going to happen. Like we always say, we hope for the best and plan for the worst. And clearly, if we're basing it off history, we shouldn't hope. We shouldn't think we're going to see something change. But we really need to hope. I mean, the fact that it's even on the table, I think, is hopeful. I mean, the fact that his name's even being discussed under these, kind of quasi-legal discussion points should be heartening for all of us, I think.
We have another related question. Let me get back there. If you were, this is a question for you personally. If you were given 30 seconds in front of President Trump to say or ask whatever you wanted, what would you say or ask?
Wow, that's a question right there. I think that if I was in front of Donald Trump, I would have to take it back to, really about his promises through the campaign and really ask him what, how we've gotten from what he was promising to where we are now, right? I mean, and that's a question I think for any president that's been something, we know that they lie during these campaigns, but everybody thought Trump, a lot of people thought that Donald Trump was genuine in those promises, which I don't think that's the case. But I would bring that to his discussion. I'd bring that to, right in front of him, discuss that and ask about how we think, continuing the Bush-Obama foreign policy is in any way going to bring to the table the nationalist, America first policy that he's been saying he's all about, because clearly they don't line up.
Related question, again, on the theme of Trump, is would you agree that Trump is taking far too long to incarcerate his enemies, most notably the big fish such as Obama, Soros, and the Clintons? Delay much longer and Trump will find himself taken out one way or another. Do you agree?
It's interesting because there's a lot of different ways to look at this. I think, yes, I agree. But I think that comes down to, most people don't really understand how much goes on behind the scenes. And it's still definitely possible that he has intentions to take certain people down, yet has chosen for political reasons not to. That being said, again, I don't think that's the case, but it's definitely possible. I would say that the way of the JFKs and the Lincolns is the kind of thing that we would see if that was pursued. And I don't think he's going to. I don't think Trump is this person that the Trump supporters truly thought he was. And, obviously, I also don't think that he's the demonized person that the opposition thinks he is. Like we always know, with politics, it's somewhere in the middle. So I think that he is just he's going to play the game like all the presidents have in the past. And I think that he will not do that if I had to make a call right now.
This one turns to a question that we have been making a habit of asking a lot of our guests recently, and that's about a cashless society and the impact on individual liberties, privacy, and the ability of free people to transact their lives as they wish. A cashless society, a serious freedom issue. We know they want it, but I know I don't want it. What should we do? Let's keep discussing. That comes from JM Carp 98.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a paramount importance. I mean, not only is it one more measure that they can have. I mean, we look at the system we have currently, whether we're talking about elections or policy. There are so many control measures in place that no matter what we actually think we're accomplishing, there's a way that they can stop it down the line. And we add this cashless society to the mix. I mean, we're already seeing this kind of thing in China with, they have all these kind of interesting programs where they can gauge you based on your activities and your responses to things. What's going to stop them from just shutting off your credit, shutting off your ability to transact in a cashless society? And I mean, that's ultimate control right there. Knowing what we see in front of us with everything else that's going on, I mean, clearly that's something we have to discuss. I think we need to continue to push the focus on, sound money, gold, silver, those kind of things, which clearly, I mean, history shows us that's the way to go.
This is a related question, and it's on, it says, can you ask Ryan if any of his gold buddies are talking about cryptocurrencies at all? If so, which ones and why? Which cryptocurrencies and why? Yep. Yeah,
that's definitely something that is important. I would say one of our writers, Tim Bryan, is probably one of the best people to ask those kind of questions about because he's always writing about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Based on what I know, I would say clearly cryptocurrency is very important. I mean, I would say it's the future if it was allowed to progress the way it should. But I would say focusing the ones that I've seen, really Bitcoin is probably the most predominantly focused on. And I think what's most important is that we focus on one that we can create and build to surpass these fiat currencies as opposed to trying to many different solutions, right? I mean, there was I think it was Ethereum was one that seemed very plausible at the time, but then it took a dive. And, these things come and go. I think Bitcoin is one that we can all agree has proven that it is substantial and that it can last. So I think that's something we just need to people just need to get behind it and fully put their support behind it. That's the hard thing is that, in a society that functions on fiat currency, you have to choose to back out and put yourself in this vulnerable position, something like we're looking at with the social media. Whereas I would love to back out of YouTube and start using something that doesn't promote these terrible agendas, yet that's where the people are, so it's this hard dynamic. But yeah, clearly I think Bitcoin's the way to go.
Next one is about the direction that we're heading and how we'll know when things are going to change in a big way. What kind of signs will occur when the jig is up? Like, what will be the real tell signals when the stones start rolling?
Well, I think the next step we're going to see, and if that is the case, I mean, if we're going to see a complete collapse, and I assume you're probably talking about a financial collapse, I would say that's going to come with, I mean, what we're seeing right now with the potential government shutdown. That's the question I posed in an article recently. Is what will the deep state pull the rug from Donald Trump between up until June 1st. And I think that's the date we need to keep our eyes on, is if that happens and if they're willing to do that, which that the setup I'm making is essentially, I feel that the deep state has set this position to where they're going to be able to pull the plug on Donald Trump and lay all of the mistakes of the past, two presidencies and, in their double terms at the feet of Donald Trump. And that's kind of what I think we're going to see in the near future here, unless that is stopped somehow. I mean, I think that's what this has been building up to this whole time. And I think the idea is to kind of lead everybody back to the idea that this nationalist idea, America First idea failed. and we need to come back to globalism, come back to this world currency. And I think that's what we're going to see. And it's going to be, obviously, it's going to be given to us as if it's some solution to a problem. Classic problem reaction solution.
Right. Never let a crisis go to waste, even if you have to create the crisis in the first place.
Exactly.
And now we can switch from the viewer questions section to the guest keynote points. So based on your research and the discussions that you've had with many guests on your channel, if you could give us 1, 2, or 3 of what you consider to be the most pressing and impactful topics that people need to be aware of that they are not hearing sufficiently about or thoroughly about on the corporate media.
Well, I would say one that I've always been very passionate about that is not getting enough attention is the idea of this opiate epidemic in our country, and how extremely prevalent it is and how undiscussed it is when you consider how many people are actually being hurt by this, and then where the problem stems from, which is just absolute government corruption. And I mean, we don't even really need to dive into the points, because I feel like most people are generally aware of that today. But what I think people aren't generally aware of is the seriousness of that problem and how many people are being hurt. I mean, it surpassed gun violence and car accidents. This is one of our, I think right now it's our number 1 killer in this country. Funny enough, number 2 was medical treatment. And that's not, neither one of those are listed on any of the top 10 causes of death in this country. And we have to ask ourselves why. Why would they not list those? It's very important. But I've written about extensively the idea that, we created this problem, and we have something like cannabis that can treat and create all of the solutions that this doesn't, that they say it will. And yet we make that illegal. We focus on something that harms people, that doesn't even do well for the one thing it's supposed to, which is pain treatment. And we push it on people because it's addictive, because it's, profit at the end of the day. And I think for me, that's one of the biggest ones. I mean, and that one I think is just completely kicked off to the side with everything we have going on today. I mean, the election, everything that's happening, people just refuse to look at it. I mean, you've seen that one, I'm sure, right? That one that is something that needs to be spread.
Yeah, I've got 2 personal anecdotes related to that. One is we have a family member who is in nursing school, about to get a nursing degree, and a significant portion of the training, and especially in the hands-on portion of the training where they do rounds at the hospitals, is focused on how you're going to get these people that you're seeing to be able to return to health, but also maintain their health once they leave your care, because they're in an addictive, chemical, opiate addictive community, and that's just part of the fabric of their life. And second is that I had an episode last year where I was admitted overnight to the hospital with heart palpitations for a completely unrelated issue, and was asked a suite of very probing questions that I had no idea where is this coming from, because this is a different world from when I had encountered the medical system, 2 decades before when we were having our children, that sort of thing. The nature of the questions were all surrounding, trying to determine whether I was having a drug overdose reaction, that kind of thing. And it was just really sobering to me to realize how clear and present and prevalent this is in our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can see it in every facet of our society right now. I mean, we are literally creating laws and creating other medicines to counteract the problems we're creating by pushing this on ourselves. It's just absolutely astounding. I mean, you can look at doctors. I mean, you can speak. There's doctors that speak out about this, but of course they won't get any attention in the media. But they are pushed to do this. I mean, you sell a certain amount of this, and you get to go to a conference in Cancun. You know what I mean? And they have definite incentives. I mean, it's the same thing we look at with the prison industry. I mean, you incentivize the wrong action, you're going to see more of it. I mean, there's no way around that. And so you have doctors that are intent, even if in their minds they've justified it to convince themselves, oh, well, this will probably help them, so it's not wrong of me to push this in a situation where it might not be necessary, but they do anyway, right? And I think that one is something everybody can agree on needs more attention. So everyone should go out and check that one out. The one that I think is the next, one that everyone's aware of, that one that's a sensitive topic. And I've promised myself that I won't veer away from it just because of its negative press. And that is obviously what has been known as Pizzagate. And I think that is one that I've written about extensively in recent weeks, that the idea of the prevalence of pedophilia among people in high positions of power is verifiable throughout history. We have people like Corey Feldman and Elijah Wood who have spoken out about it and gotten no attention. And the idea of Pizzagate has been kind of funneled to make it look crazy intentionally. And I think that's what people need to pay attention on. And the real focus of what this came from was the idea with the Clinton Foundation and a woman named Laura Silsby, or Laura Gaylor. It's her married name. And how she was gotten off the hook trying to smuggle 33 children from Haiti. And this is a fact. Simply just go look this up. It's verifiable. And the Clinton Foundation stepped in and got her off the hook, specifically Hillary Clinton. And that's where this investigation truly started. And then the WikiLeaks came out with the emails, the Podesta emails, and then it just went on from there. That attention, that specific case was given zero attention, completely, made to look crazy, and it's verifiable. And so the idea is that the investigation has been derailed intentionally. And I think that is what people need to pay attention to, because it goes much larger than this. It comes back to just corruption in the government and how it's being used to hide different topics like this of the people in power. And, I think after seeing what happened in the election and how they cheated and rigged and made things happen and then just pointed to the Russians and we're all supposed to forget, we have to know that there are things like this going on that are being covered up. And if anything that they tell us is just too crazy to pay attention to these days, probably need to take a look at.
Beyond opiate addiction and pedophilia at high positions of power, anything else that rises to the top of your list of concerns of you and your guests?
Yeah, the last thing that I think is always important to note is that in this day and age, we've gotten to this point where people are being told that their feelings matter more than the truth, sadly, and people are eating that up because they want to know that they want to feel that they're right. This day and age, with so much misinformation going around, intentional and otherwise, it is so very important that we do away with self-censorship. We cannot be afraid. Like, for instance, I talked about the idea of pedophilia in positions of power. I'm sure there's going to be people that don't like that don't want to hear that.
Sure.
But I'm not going to shy away from it because I find it to be important. You make up your own decision. That's, for everyone to make their own. But I've made a promise to myself to not shy away from any topic, or rather be open-minded to any topic, just because, that's the right thing to do. That's journalistic integrity at the end of the day. And people that go out and refuse to share an article, refuse to like an article, refuse to talk about it amongst their friends, or refuse to even acknowledge that they're aware of something for fear that other people will look down on them is a huge issue in this country. And that it's being created and pushed on most people for that exact reason. So we're made to feel like we're part of a minority when in reality we're part of the silent majority. Yeah. And most people in this country are aware of that.
Yeah, that's the irony of media in general, is that there can be such a skewed representation of reality on the part of those who have the microphone, as long as it's centralized. And as most people listening to this know, there's been a more than a century-long consolidation of power in media, where we started out with a country full of small newspapers, and they got consolidated in fewer and fewer hands, to where there's only a couple news organizations now run by just a couple extremely powerful individuals. And from that, you can end up as an ordinary person with a completely distorted understanding of where public sentiment is and where the truth really lies, because what doesn't get talked about, what gets just made invisible and made silent, just tends to fade out of mind, because there is so much distraction and so much other stuff that's being pressed to the front. And so that distortion of what's presented is a distortion of thought control and power that it's very difficult, and it seems increasingly so, that the hope was that the internet was going to be the great salvation that was going to break people, to make it democracy of information. But the other aspect, if you could focus in, circle back to this, feelings more important than the truth. It seems to me that's fundamentally critical about our ability to even think clearly, to reason clearly, and to understand that feelings are subjective and emotional and relative, but truth is not subjective. So, can you talk a little bit about the relativism and personalism aspects of feelings being more important than the truth? How it affects our ability to even think clearly, to have conversations?
Yeah, I think that it's on a profound level. It's the same kind of concept of repeating a lie long enough. And they've scientifically proven that even when people know something's not true, if they were to repeat it every day for a year, at some point you begin to feel like that's true. And that's kind of what we're seeing. It comes back to the idea of hypocrisy, is that people are being conditioned to feel that way, to feel that. I've even seen people say that in interviews where they basically say, well, the people feel this way, so I'm going to listen to that before I listen to the facts. Because these are politicians. We forget that. These people, their lives function based on how they can get us to act or think or feel. And so basically they're conditioning people to think that their feelings based on, and of course, those feelings have been created before this, right? They've created the circumstances they want first. Then they convince you that your feelings about those circumstances are validated, and really what we've come to find out is that we're all hypocrites today. It's been conditioned into our brains. It's part of our psyche at this point. Even us. It's hard. We think about things like, for instance, the point I made in a recent show was we'll be watching something. Or like on, a new, whether that's on mainstream media or an independent channel, and we'll see a story come out, and if it's about something that we wanted to happen, Hillary Clinton going to prison or something, but we'll be like, oh right, that's perfect, we want that. In most cases, not even stopping to be like, I wonder if that's true. It's just because we want it, and we're like, yes, we knew that was going to happen. You know what I mean? And so we all do it to some degree. We are less critical of things that we want to be true, and that's what's very hard today. Is that we all need to take that step back and question everything. In our show, our TLAV Political Roundtable, we do a segment called Devil's Advocate, and that's the specific intention, is to put ourselves in positions to ask questions about things that we think we're certain about, and it's hard. It's hard to take a step back and really critically analyze something that you feel and that's really what it comes down to. And I think that's what we're seeing today, is that everybody's been told that your feelings matter, and that what you feel about this is more important than what the news is telling you or what independent media is telling you. And I think it's growing us to a position where these people are now being led like the Pied Piper, these mindless people that are being led by those feelings, and and knowing that they created from them in the first place. Yeah, it's very depressing.
Yeah, the laying the groundwork and tilling the soil ahead of the time is a new aspect of that I was not versed in until recently. My son, who's actually studying, you'll appreciate this. He's studying to get a degree in broadcast journalism, but awesome. He introduced my wife and myself to a book called Persuasion by Robert Cialdini, and it says a revolutionary way to influence and persuade, and it talks all about that and about how the groundwork can be laid both verbally, non-verbally, and so on before the actual message is delivered. So you're already not persuading, but persuading people to already be sympathetic to your message, already be looking only for the thing that you're about to show them or tell them, and distracting their attention away from other things and to focusing only on the thing. Lots of psychological explanations in there that what we tend to focus on tends to seem more important to us, regardless of whether it is or not. So just like a magician will distract you from where you shouldn't be looking and try to get you to look where you should be looking, that the communicators, the persuaders, are actually persuading us by getting us to focus, and we're just naturally thinking that whatever it is we find ourselves focusing on is therefore more important. Also, we had a guest on recently, Jerry Robinson, author of Bankruptcy of Our Nation, and he talked about modern day propaganda and how the propagandist is like the anesthesiologist who shows up to numb you down before the surgeon's going to come in and go for the cut. So if people are interested, check out the book Persuasion. Also check out our recent interview with Jerry Robinson on propaganda. So
I have an interesting note actually on the propaganda side of that, which I'm sure a lot of people are unfamiliar with. And this actually blew my mind when I first came across this, is that most people aren't aware that in 2012, the NDAA was amended to basically allow, there's a lot of things that have changed in 2012, as well as very recently in the NDAA, that basically take away our constitutional rights. I recommend everybody look into that. Just simply look up the NDAA and find out what that's all about. But in 2012, there was an amendment that was made that actually verifiably made propaganda legal. The Smith-Mundt Act, I believe it was of 1947, legalized propaganda overseas, which basically meant that the government could distribute false information for political purposes to overseas nations. But in 2012, it was silently amended to allow the government to send that same false propaganda to our own country. So basically what that means, and that's not just basically this, literally what this means is that the news story you might have seen yesterday could actually be fake. And the idea that they did it for some kind of greater good political reason, and it's not only okay, it's legal now. And I think something we have to understand, now we're seeing all these crazy news stories and things we're going, well, why would they allow that? Or why did the Washington Post put that story out that was verifiably false? That's why. And we have to know that moving forward. And that's a scary prospect to think about, too.
Any other topics that we've missed and you'd like to bring to the mind of our viewers that they should look into further that will be impactful to them and their families' freedom, their safety, their risk to their finances going forward?
Yeah, I always like to send people in the direction of is the idea of the CDC and the recent, I think they're calling themselves the Spider Group. Basically, it's a group of scientists within the CDC that have been outspoken and written, actually had, put out memos about how the CDC has been corrupted, about how they are, doing what they're doing for profit, and they no longer care about the health and well-being of the American people. I mean, this is all true stuff. And of course, the mainstream media didn't give it any coverage, but it really goes one step further after this, the CDC whistleblower of Thompson with the whole, it started off the whole vaxxed, topic. Yeah. And, really, this is now them reaffirming that, which gets no coverage in the media. But that's true, that they lied, they corrupted, they trashed information. And that's the reality behind our Centers for Disease Control. And really, at the end of the day, these are people that are supposed to be protecting us, and they're doing things for profit. And we have to be aware of that today. That's the entirety of our government in general, I would say. Which
raises the question again of people being concerned about basically anything, any increase in scope of the government taking, whether it's over the healthcare system, so-called healthcare system, or whether it's over any other aspect of their lives, being concerned that that's a recipe for disaster for the individual, for seeking their best interests of their families, being able to actually have a say-so and influence, determine the course of their destiny, that sort of thing. So glad that you're out there adding your voice and providing a platform for others to add their voices to get people to be aware so that they can be informed and make more intelligent and prudent choices to protect their families' well-being. If you could give us a quick rundown of where people can find you online and any ways that they can support your work.
Yeah, actually, the best way to support any of us these days is going to go to patreon.com, / Last American Vagabond. We are 100% people funded, and we put our complete focus on the truth and providing people with information and really, revenue a distant second at this point. I mean, I'm sure everyone in this industry knows this is not really a profitable industry. We do this because we care about the truth.
And increasingly so. I've heard from now 4 different individuals who are independent media producers in the past month and a half that their month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year, view counts, revenue, that sort of thing are all on significant declines after having been on really on an increasing tear for the previous 2 to 3 or 4 years. So this is something that people from all different angles of independent media are reporting. So go ahead.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And it's something that, like we talked about, it's from the censorship aspect. It's from any number of things that are being laid intentionally to divert the truth, to take away what we're trying to bring to the table. And, Patreon is the best way to do it. It's somewhere where you can go. You can choose to donate $1 a month if you want, and then you are officially part of the organization at that point. We have a Patreon page. We put your name on. There's all kind of ways you can get involved. I mean, really, that's one thing that's important anyways, that anyone out there that's interested in getting involved, that wants to write, that wants to go out and make videos, that wants to take part in this change, feel free to reach out to me, Ryan at thelasamericanvagabond.com, because it's about the people. It's about starting something from the bottom up. That's the only way we're really going to see any change today. Make sure you check us out also on our new radio station, WKUP, as in Wake Up. It's actually WKUP The Shift. And it's where we air all of our content, all of our podcasts. This episode I'm sure will be on there as well. And it's a good way to, that's actually our kind of nonprofit platform where we promote a lot of independent artists, different musicians. I find that a lot of hip hop artists are very, very attuned to what's really going on and then spit a lot of truth in their words. So we wanted to create a platform for them as well as our podcasts and everything. as well as just everything else, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, anywhere. But just check us out at the lastamericanvagabond.com and help support the move.
Well, Ryan, Cristian from the LastAmericanVagabond.com and the Last American Vagabond YouTube channel, thank you so much for joining us for this first time here on Reluctant Preppers. We have a very active following and audience. They love to submit viewer questions. We'd love to have you back again and continue to field viewers' questions as we go forward.
Oh, I would absolutely love that.